All right, let's welcome into Straight Fire. He's been on the pod once before. You know him from ESPN, from his new betting venture, Only Players. Doug Kezirian. Doug, how you doing, man?
Good to be with you, man. I know the life gets in the way, especially you with a family, but we don't uh, communicate enough. That I was thinking about when you reached out for the pod. I was like, gosh, I've just fallen off the grid so much with so many people. So I'm really psyched just to chop it up for a little bit.
Yeah, and you like to ruffle some feathers in the gambling space, shall we say? You had an awesome hit around the NFL draft. Was it 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, maybe? With
Three,
with
yeah.
tell the audience what that one was again.
Yeah, it
I
was an
was
NFL draft prop. And so basically, when the betting space was even newer back then, because, right, it was 2021 and legalization started 2018. And not many people knew that I had this betting background because I'd done Sports Center, so conventional Sports Center and conventional sports talk radio at ESPN for so long that many thought I was just like a talking head that pivoted to the betting space. But I was like, no, I've been, I had a bookie in high school and then I had worked in Vegas for 7 years before that, and I had kept my connections and things like that. So coming back out to Vegas with ESPN, it was great because I could talk betting, bet myself, and get lean on my betting team and my sources and all my connections in the space. But yeah, there was a draft prop and it was just a perfect storm. We talk about it all the time with the draft, how there's sometimes tweeners in terms of positions. And there was a guy named Tyson Campbell, who
yes.
NFL fans kind of know who he is with the Jaguars now, but he was climbing draft boards that week. So a week to go for the draft. So the draft's on a Thursday. So starting like Friday before, his for example, his over under at Circa went from 62 and a half
Mm,
to 46 and a half, then like 38 and a half. So his over
wow.
under kept moving. So, he was a cornerback and played, but he was tall. And so what happened was the over under moved, but other indexes don't necessarily move as well. And in a he was in a index bet of safety. Um, and so we see this more with pass rushers. Like some guy's a linebacker and he projects as a pass rusher and he's an edge rusher and things like that. You play a certain position in college, but that doesn't necessarily translate over to the NFL. So I noticed on the Monday night of the draft week that he was listed in a safety index. And he was 100 to 1, much like so many people are, because they had a minus money favorite. It was Mo Woodard was supposed to go to the Raiders. He's out of TCU and like the middle of the first round. And then there was another guy out of, I believe, UCF or Notre Dame. There's two guys. And then it was everyone else was like 101. Well, he's a cornerback, not a safety technically, but he was projecting as a safety like 3 months out when they made the index bet and they just never
Mm.
fixed it. So what happens in a lot of these is, so anyway, so I bet a bunch at him at 100 to 1. I was able to get down at the kiosk machine at night, and they didn't. This is over like 2.5 hours, by the way. They could have moved the odds, they just didn't. And whether that's personnel issue, like I didn't really care.
Did
I
you
had
bet
him.
it at one place or multiple?
So no, I had Bellagio and Aria. So I
Mm.
talked about it. And I talked to my main betting partner is a huge draft guru, so we were talking some more about it. And I was like, I'm going to go back and bet more, and just kind of went not all in, but I bet a few thousand on it because it was like such good value. And I had so many positions by then on the draft. I do well in the draft every year. The draft, and I think it's surfaced since then, is really tough for odds makers because it's information driven and it's not a sport where it's just like this point spread and random. It's you can be so wrong with your original line post, right? Just even the year that Trey Lance, it went from like plus 400 to minus 300 back to plus money. There's such volatility in the movement based on like one tweet or one comment or one podcast by Mel Kiper Jr. The built-in buffer hold percentage for the house doesn't offset how wrong they can be because aside from like maybe week 18 or preseason, you don't see line moves in the NFL like this weekend. Quarterback change from Andy Dalton to Bryce. It's only going to move like a point. It's not going to go from -7 to +7. Like that
No.
doesn't happen. We see it in the NBA tonight with both Joel Embiid and Paul George out, but it's gone from like 2.5 to 3. Like this is like -500 to like +3. It's just nuts.
Yeah.
And Trayvon Walker, like he was like a field bet at one of the books out here about a month out, and then he ended up being the number one pick.
Mm.
So that's where like the players have an advantage, and the operators. Let's face it, the odds makers are just not that good at it because they don't put in the work and they don't
Yeah.
do as much work as the betters do because they have a lot of other stuff on their plate as well.
Yeah, so we've had a lot of gamblers come on the pod and talk about getting banned at certain casinos in Vegas. I don't think as much offshore they do banning, but when you hit that at Bellagio, were you then banned from going in there and placing draft bets?
No, so it's an MGM property. So I at like 6 books right now. I can only bet like $5 on the app. A
Oh,
couple of them I can go in person and bet more, like a regular straight wager amount. So it's just like they make people do that because it's time consuming. People really don't do that. There's others I can't at all. Like it's just annoying, and it is
yeah.
what it is. But that's what people need to understand. And by the way, I ended up winning 297,000 on that Tyson Campbell situation.
Yeah,
And
I saw that written about in the Vegas newspaper.
so
I mean,
many
that's
crazy things had to happen. Like Mobrick Woodard had to fall, and then there had to be no other safeties. And then the corner, like he was like the 8th corner taken. And it just so happened that Urban Meyer had recruited him out of high school back when he was at Ohio State. And then Meyer's now the coach of the Jags. So if it wasn't Meyer at the Jags, like another safety would have gone because like a safety went like 3 picks later. So
right.
probably the true odds should have been like 25-1, 30-1. But that's like those are the odds in an index when you have a
Yeah.
minus money favorite. And he's like the 5th long shot or whatever. So
That's incredible hit.
I mean,
Um,
we're pro. You hear a lot like, oh well, those buildings on the strip don't go up because the sport. They're up because of the casino. So
yeah.
the hold percentage is quite low, especially in Nevada. Like other states, obviously bettors aren't as experienced, but it's like 4.5%. And I talked to a buddy, he's an odds maker. I go, what would the hold percentage be if sharps could bet what they wanted within reason? Like they'll take a sharp bet, some books, some you can't at all. And then they'll adjust, and it's like within reason, there's limit. And he goes, it'd probably go to like 3%. And I go, okay. And then what if like parlays were never invented? Like, what if no one had any parlays? And he goes, probably 0%. So like that's why the DraftKings of the world, that like it's really like it's not like the math isn't as clean as it is in like the roulette wheel, right? The
Mhm.
roulette wheel math, you're getting certain payout, you're getting even money on red or even money on black, and the house is getting the other color and 2 greens. Okay. Like that math is inarguable, right?
Yeah.
The roulette wheel, it's inarguable, right? Like the craps table, like we know the math of the dice. Blackjack, it's not quite as clean, but we know the math for the most part, right? So in sports, there's just a wider range of outcomes, right? It's
Mhm.
just not as simple as these X amount of numbers on a roulette wheel. So if you know what you're doing to a certain extent, or if you just have a good season, right, then you can make money and it's not that rigorous, especially like softer markets like the WNBA and things like that.
Mhm.
Like the house, like they don't pay these odds makers a ton of money. Like the smartest guys are on, for the most part, are on this side of the counter. So it can be done. Now they're really good at like bookmaking for sure. Like they're more experts at bookmaking than they are like odds making. Like they know how to like a lot of their job titles are manager of risk, and they're good at bookmaking. They're good at like anticipating certain sharp money, like Tuesday of NFL week. They know where the sharp money is going to be. Like they're really good at bookmaking. To be an originator, a line originator, and post a line that no one else has, like maybe a summer league game, like Wembanyama's props or something. Like there's no market for that. Like that's really hard. Or
It
to
is. Yeah.
create a prop bet on something that hasn't been created yet, like I don't know, Judge versus Otani in the World Series homers or whatever that is. Like line origination is hard, but that's the advantage we have is they have to put up a menu of a million bets and we can sneak in and pick one. And
Yeah.
that's why they're getting plus 110 or whatever. So beating the number is not like thoroughly impossible, especially because there's so many smart people out on the betting space. There's so much information out there. The analytics are out there. So if you've been doing it a long time, you hopefully the scar tissue and the pain I've learned the hard way over the years has taught me a thing or two. But that's why these books limit certain people. It's because it's not just like printing money like it is slot machines or roulette, some of the card
Yeah.
games in the casino floor.
Yeah. So are you at the point where, you mentioned WNBA and I see you tweeting about the WNBA finals, Major League Baseball. Where do you rank NFL week to week, like Sunday games? Obviously everybody loves them. Everybody spends a lot of time watching them. It's tough to have a big edge in these. You do the contest, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. So last year, I think I basically had my best NFL season ever. I finished 14th in Circa Millions, 14th in
Wow.
Westgate. And that's the thing. You don't know when you're going to have your best season. So you
Yeah.
want to be in these contests. Now, am I a lifetime 65% better in the NFL? No.
No.
This year, I've actually crazy. I'm up like 40 something units. I've done well live wagering. And this is all kind of transparent. Like we post everything and everything's through our app and stuff. And I want to get the betting space to a space where it's not just some guy babbling what he's doing. It's like everything's tracked and all this stuff. Like I was actually looking into it. And I still haven't really fully vetted it, but like like the Ernst and Young certifies the NBA draft, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
They're
yeah.
not like a draft generator company, but they put their brand on the NBA. So like I would love to get my records confirmed or validated by Ernst and Young or something like that. We can get to it. Like we're really in our infancy, right? This is
Oh,
like
certainly.
top half of the first inning of legalized sports betting over the
But wait,
course of the
Doug,
next
isn't
decade.
there, and again, I didn't get an invite to this. I don't know if you're involved, but isn't there I've heard mentions of it, of a contest in Vegas with some of the perceived sharp NFL gamblers, and they track, I guess, their best three picks. I think it's maybe a Las Vegas newspaper or a website. Do you know what I'm talking
Well,
about?
there's always been like newspapers and contest things. Like I'm in a contest with VSIN through Circa where there's 25 professional handicappers have all been invited. I've been in it 3 straight years. Yeah, I finished top 8. That's why I got invited back each of the last 2 years. You have to pick 7 sides or totals, college and NFL against
That's it. That's the one I'm talking about.
yeah,
Somebody who's been on here has talked about that. Yeah.
noon on Friday. The Circa line's noon on Friday instead of like a stale line that has to come out Wednesday, like some of these NFL contests are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm ninth place or something right now. I've only won one best bet, but like I was in first place with like 3 weeks to go a couple years ago, the first year of it. But it happened. Like
But doesn't
sports
that
betting,
kind of fit your bill of shouldn't like Ernst and Young validate the picks? Doesn't that
right? But
sort of thing count, sort of,
look,
or
I've
not
done
really?
well in contests. Like 2 years ago, I had 2 top 5 finishes in the William Hill College Football Contest, won $58,000. It was great, right? I had 2 of my 5 entries, finished top 5. I was very close. Like first place was 100 grand. I had like one last drive by Wake Forest game. It was crazy.
Oh,
So, but like contests are just sort of one aspect of sports betting, right?
definitely, yeah.
And then the whether it be the content space of podcasts, TV shows, written columns, that's just one bet, best bet of the day. Like no one makes one wager, same amount every
No.
day, right? There's futures. So what I did with my company is I wanted to simulate the sports betting experience. So like I wanted to calculate and tally units on futures, in game, pre-game, props, all this stuff where I can demonstrate like I can't tell you how many people DM me and saying, "What do I do? I have this 8-leg parlay. Like, what should
Oh,
I?"
geez, yeah.
And it's awesome. But I think that's where I'm flattered by people know that like I know how to like figure that out, right? Like, and that's stuff I want to do with we have a subscription service now, but we want to evolve the sports better. That's our hope, right? And I was talking to a guy at the dog park randomly because he heard me finishing up a phone call. And he was like, "Hey, I'm a poker player. I don't know much about sports, but like, how do you do this?" And he basically got me to think about it in a different way. He's like, "How do you make someone a better sports bettor?" And I'm just thinking like, it's a great point because like the first 3 things I would say are undoing 3 bad habits. It's like, the betting space is so limited right now. If the content space, then it's like the tout space and like that's it, right? There's so many other parallels from other industries you can cross over, right? So like we're doing a lot of stuff kind of like golf instruction, right? You don't just learn how to hit one shot. You want your golf coach to like teach you how to, help improve your stroke, your swing. And then you can, practice on your own and do things. So like I've created sort of a flow chart or whatever, where like I do individual Zooms with guys and things like that, where I can teach people like to how to undo and stop the bad habits. Because that's really how I did it. You just get hit over the head enough times, you learn that like that's the best thing. I mean, just a simple question like ask, they need to know what's the better number in an NFL game. Is it -2.5, -120, or -3 plus 100?
Right.
Like you just got to know it's -2.5 plus -120. Like so, it's just stuff like that. Like there's an educational component to a lot of this stuff rather than just like, hey, take the Packers -4, my game of the year, pay me whatever $9.99. Like there's so many better things to do and to evolve the space. And you just have to create the infrastructure and then hopefully enough people do it. And then I need to be, market it and do all that stuff. But that's what we're trying to do, big picture.
So I would ask you, you said there's two levels to it. There's the content space and then there's the touts. Which do you think you technically fall in? Because I think,
Well, I
and
want to
again,
make
I
like
stay, you want to
I
what?
want to do like 3, 4, 5, 6. I want to have like eight, a bunch of different lanes, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the whole point. I'm trying to evolve this space into a world that's beyond this like app A and B
Yeah.
concept. It's like
So,
there's got to
but
be.
here's, okay. So let me back up. So who, and this is a tough one because, like, who is saying there's content and touts? Is that like the theme among the gambling
Well,
sewer that's
there's the
online, or
tout world has existed forever, like the Jim
right?
Fice world, where you give people picks and stuff like that, right? And then you sell it, and then there's packaging. Like that's just existed since the beginning of time. I mean, that's existed in I would
Certainly.
imagine the Wall Street world, right? There's like boiler room tactics and things all along those lines, right? There's financial analysts, and then there's like the content space, and there's different forms of the content space, right? There's podcast TV, but there's no other sort like poker pros about 5, 10 years ago. I had heard, and I know some that started doing individual private lessons. That there were CEOs and all these people who do these high, they're like successful businessmen. Instead of playing golf, right? They also do poker charity events or just play poker every Wednesday or every other Wednesday with the guys. And they wanted to get better at poker. So there's webinars on this stuff, and there's YouTube channels you have to pay for to just get better, because obviously there's a million permutations with poker in terms of like, the raising and all that. Like there's so much technique involved. It's like kind of like golf, right? You can have side hill, downhill live. It's not just, hey, hit a 150-yard shot. So in poker, like there's so much nuance to how many other people are in the pot, how much is left in your stack, the bidding, the raising, all that stuff. So in sports, there's so much different layers to this as well. So I started to think about with poker pros, and they're getting hired at a high rate by a few experts. I have people I work with who are high end bettors, and I can help them evolve, and they can glean some wisdom, and I can put together lesson plans and shared screens on Zooms and do all sorts of stuff. And I also, they have access to me too. So like on a Discord chat, like they don't have some of them don't have my cell, but they have my like Discord. So they can ask me anything at any time throughout the week during games. And they're like, hey, this is going on, or hey, I bet this on my own. Like I'm doing that. Like, what do you think? So there's learned experiences. Like I've taken golf lessons. There's millions of times I've texted my golf guy like, hey, I shot this today, but I could have done that. What would you, so there's always, and you have
That
this,
is
I'm
an
sure in your
interesting
world too,
comparison.
where
Yeah,
people, it's basically a consultant, right? Like you can
right.
create, and
So
then you create knowledge build infrastructure where people can, learn. It's like going from a yellow belt to a brown belt, purple
yeah,
belt, it's that kind of concept where you can, grow as a better if you're new to this space, or
I
your
guess
kid's turning 21 and you want to help him. And there's all sorts of ways to do this besides like the tout world, and then listen to this podcast.
yeah. So the biggest pushback would be, okay, so let's take, Adam Chernoff, obviously, Right Angle Sports,
Sure.
good guy. He's been on the podcast a bunch. So
Yeah.
Right Angle Sports releases their picks, right? And unless you're getting the notification, the alert right before they release it, you're
Right.
more than likely going to miss their release at, I don't know, let's just say 6.5. And then boom, it's at 7. And you now can no longer get the best number and you're shafted. So you might be like, that's the only problem I have with. I've never paid for a tout service before.
Right.
And like,
So I've talked to people like that who do influence the market, the few out there, and I don't want to put anyone on spot or bad mouth. So I said, you're doing a disservice to your, like, you have to just charge more. And if it ends up being 3 people who get your service and they cover the same nut, right? If it's 10 people at $1, right? You need to charge $5 for 2 people, right? It's just that to get the same $10, whatever it is, right? So I'm with you. Now, the NFL is a liquid enough market where those numbers will come back at times. Like I know what RAS has played, and the market will sometimes come back.
but wait,
not
hold on,
like
Doug.
college hoops.
That's a good point. The market will come back, but here's the thing: how long do you have to sit staring at the screen to
Oh
not
no, it'll
miss it
come back.
back?
Like they'll send out a release like Wednesday, and like Sunday morning it might come back.
Mm.
But you're
Yeah,
right. If you're not doing it instantaneously, it moves because the books, like we talked about, flag those accounts.
yeah.
So I'm of the belief that you have to do things in a certain way and have a price point. But then you also have to have a value add. Like yes, everyone who subscribes to my stuff knows what picks I'm doing, and I do them in a timely way and whatever. But there's so much more to it. I just think that's one aspect to it all, right?
So
Like
let's
I
take a
think
line
people
from
want,
this week. Let's do a week
sure.
8 line. Let's go Cincinnati and Philly. So it looks like we're recording this Thursday, Wednesday afternoon. It
Right.
looks like there's some Eagles money maybe coming in, right? So it was 2.5. I'm seeing some twos. I see a 1.5 at FanDuel. So somebody, let's just say Joe Smith, who is an advantage gambler, he's plus EV, he's a multimillionaire. He gave out to his service. Let's just say he did Eagles plus 2.5. All of a sudden the line comes down, but you had a meeting, you had lunch with your wife, all this stuff. You missed it. It's now
Right.
1.5. It's like, and that's Doug. I don't know how you solve that other than like just saying, you know what, I'm not going to have a life. I'm not going to hang with my kids or coach my kids or I just it's a really tough life. Like, be honest, how
Right.
many hours a day are you looking at the screen?
So it's a great point. The one thing I do say is I'm a bachelor, and I know
You are,
plenty of
yeah, you're
people,
single.
yourself included, who are successful in their careers and successful at home. So it's like two full-time jobs, right? Like to be a parent, and obviously you have a spouse who helps with the parenting and does they're a full-time parent as well. But if I don't have that, like I can do a lot of
Mm,
this stuff. But I also built a TV studio in my house. So we're doing a lot of content with we're gonna announce some like any day now, but we have like a bunch of deals we've had to get the contract signed, everything. But we're going to be a third content provider of betting content. So we can do talkbacks, we can do all these like different Tetris pieces. So we're in the content space as well. So like, I mean, you're old enough. We were the same age at roughly. It's like, remember the old the Motley Fool? Like they would do sort of
mm,
like a daily newsletter, and it still exists now, but it's just in a
yeah.
different format. But like Wall Street Journal, right? Like they have educational and they have analytical stuff, and they have a paywall as well. And there's so that's kind of what we want to be. And now they can be a third party, like partner up with another outlet. So I can do betting content that some of it's behind on our paywall site, but some of it's just different. It's like, hey, I'm just telling you what I'm hearing, and it's kind of interesting content, hopefully, that we can create for other outlets and do other stuff because people need betting content, but they're slowly realizing this is my other beef with the betting space that, the invisible hand's going to always work itself out, but people are realizing that they don't have the horses to do this stuff in house. Like there was just this mass like push of just giving everyone the title of betting analyst, which I was just like so random. Like it's just
Mm,
like how's whereas like if you're watching CBS before kickoff on Sunday mornings, like Bill Cowher's there and like all these people who have credentials, and it's just like this talking head. Like I think the biggest mistake the betting space, and I don't know if ESPN did it or who did it first, but just I think people should have literally would have been as simple as just giving them a betting personality or betting talent or just something that wasn't analyst. Because I think all these people get on the defensive and they're trying to be so technical and they're trying to be the same person
mm.
with their plays. It's just like just be like a betting talent or betting personality, and then they can do some of the gimmicky social media stuff. I mean, I think Cousin Sal's like the great example. He's really funny, really knowledgeable about sports. He doesn't take himself too seriously. He's not sitting there ever describing the value of a half point. He's just talking sports through the lens of betting, and he's a great listen because he's funny and he has great anecdotal comments, and he's just himself. Right now, he's allowed to do that because he's more well known and all this stuff. But a lot of these networks are making a mistake just giving like 7 people or 5 people, whatever it is. Everyone's a betting analyst. They're all trying to do the same thing. And it's just a bunch of monotonous and it's not interesting to the masses. And that's why it's not working on the network level for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, this is gonna sound bad. I don't really watch any of the pregame shows. I can't get into them. I feel like, yeah, listen, you and I are in this space. We pay attention to everything.
Right.
Are you learning anything from any of those guys? Are they giving out
No,
gambling
no, I don't
tips?
watch him
No,
either.
right. So I'm not in on that. But like, I mean, but for instance, my process. So the first 2 bets I made for week 8, and both the lines have gone both against me early this week, right? So I
That
saw
happens.
Packers Jags. I took Packers -4.5, and I took Niners -5 after their loss to the Chiefs against the Cowboys coming off the bye. Now, the Niners one probably could bite me in the ass if Debo Samuel. I figured I didn't know he was that sick. And then Monday
Right. No one
morning,
did.
he's in
Right.
the hospital. I'm like, oh, shit. Well, that's not great. Jennings, I expect him back. We know Ayuk's done, but I expect the Niners to bounce back. And I think schematically, Kyle Shanahan's a nightmare for Mike Zimmer's defense, even if they get Parsons back. But the line's going against me. The other one is the Packers. I don't believe in this Jaguars defense. I've bet against them multiple times this year. They are total garbage.
I
However,
agree.
is there a letdown going on the road? But both lines have gone against me. But I'm already pot committed to those. I'm just curious for your process. Are you an early in the week better? And what's your move if the lines go against
It
you?
just depends. So I think taking a step away, I think you've kind of pinpointed in a lot of ways why the NFL can be beatable for more casual sports bettors because it's very math driven, right? So much like in the early 2000s with the poker world, similar timeline, the math guys came in to the betting world and started being the shaping of the market. So the eye test bettors, if you will, it's like the Moneyball concept, right? The old school scout, like they have an advantage because the math guys think one way and they can't help themselves. They really can't. So like I was, for example, last weekend, I was really surprised the Jaguars line steamed as high as it did because usually there's going to be buyback at some key numbers. So with your example of the Packers, like it won't go that high, I don't think. Like they can't help themselves for taking the ugly dogs. Like they can't help themselves on the Panthers now that Bryce Young's going to start. Like
Oh,
at
please,
some
no way.
point, they're going to take it. But what happens is the market just is stubborn like that. However, we do see blowouts. We do see one-sided game. So that's why the sharps have a really tough time. And in the NFL, the game plans are very hard. This is what made Belichick so hard for modelers because one week he'd run 45 times, and the
Yep.
next week he'd throw 45 times. So I don't care what the stats were in the past. It's really hard to do projections for a guy like that because the pass almost didn't matter with him. It's about he would choreograph a game plan and find your weaknesses. And they always said he'd make you play left-handed. And, things like that, it's really hard to project. Like I used to say this about the SEC championship game. But, this is prior to DraftKings and FanDuel. It was really hard for these sports books to do props on Georgia and Alabama wide receivers because they hadn't played in a competitive game all season. It's like they would play 3 quarters tops against, that was when Tennessee was weak and then Vanderbilt was weak. So it's like you take stats of Devontae Smith and some of the Jalen Waddle against like the first half and like maybe the half of the third quarter against Vandy, and you're trying to do props against Georgia. Like, I mean, doing a total in that game is hard enough. How do you do like props? So it's real. That's why. So the NFL, some teams will lay down, like you said, the let down spot and all this stuff. So I think all that means it's really hard for the math modelers, and it's just kind of open season, and the market may not be that tight in the NFL. Sure, we're going to have upsets like we did the first X amount of weeks, but it's starting to even itself out. We kind of know what the deal is with like the Browns, although now they're changing quarterbacks. And we know where some of these teams are. Like we just had misconceptions. Like we thought the Jags were good because opening week, they really should have beat the Dolphins.
Yeah.
But they only lost by 3 in a fluky outcome. And it's been downhill since. So we had to get hit over the head a couple times, chasing what we saw the week 1 with Jacksonville. And now we realize just how bad they are. And we're not going to overreact to a London win over New England.
So the Jags, I know everybody's going to point to, oh, well, the Jags, they were just in London for 2 weeks. They're going to be exhausted. There's basically no data that backs that up. I mean, it sounds good, right? And I'm sure other people will say it, but there's no data that says coming off 2 weeks in London, blah, blah, blah. But some stuff that's out there, like Jordan Love just destroys zone defenses. Like you cannot zone Jordan Love. He will shred you. He's arguably the best quarterback, the numbers say, against the zone. All Jacksonville does is play zone. And I'm sure you saw Cam Robinson with the concussion, and then he's got the long flight back from London. I'm guessing he's a no-go this week, the left tackle. And, we know the Packers are top 10 in pressure rate, and they don't blitz a lot. This just nothing lines up for Jacksonville here. So I don't know. I'm just curious, Doug. What are people seeing that you think?
So this is great that you brought this up. So let's go to the Jordan Love thing. Are you talking more from a props standpoint, a Packers team total, or just the minus the points?
Well, I start with the side because I don't see any prop totals out yet. Do you?
No, but you kind of know what it'll be roughly, right?
Yeah.
And so even with the strong betting angle like you have, there's going to be some variance. Like I was heavy on Geno Smith last week against the Falcons, right? When Geno has a clean pocket, he can thrive. Yep. And we saw that against the Lions. We saw that in some other games as well. He's been awesome. But remember, they had a defensive touchdown. Then they had the big lead they were protecting. So I lost on his over passing yards. He only had like 210 or so, but he had, that huge touchdown right before halftime. So he went over 1.5 passing touchdowns. But I guess what I'm saying is the variance, even when the matchup is favorable and they play well, sometimes the game script can go a certain way where things don't play out, necessarily like they quote unquote should. And that's the same thing that happens in the Packers games, right? The first 4 weeks, all these sharps were fading the Chiefs because they were losing the box score. And They were barely covering. It's like, yeah, they barely beat the Ravens in week 1. Lively's toe was on the line, but they were also up 10. And if they had just gotten a first down, they were playing sort of
Yeah.
prevent victory a little. So they could easily win by 10. So there's different way. And then they didn't look that great in some other games. The Chargers game, they were, just messing around, playing with their food, and they won by exactly 7. Could have easily lost the game.
Yeah.
So a lot of people just kept fading the Chiefs. But again, these other teams, and this is where I think being a sports fan like yourself and knowledgeable about sports and more than just being a fan, I mean, you're connected and you know this stuff. Like, the Chiefs are playing the long game and teams are allowed to change and get better. That's why, frankly, a lot of these math modelers in the NFL use last year's stats as a baseline. So even this juncture of the season, even week 12, like last year's stats are part of their projections because they want larger sample size. And so they use a lot of the individual stats because teams change, obviously some player personnel.
But that's tough with the Chiefs, Doug, right? I mean, Pacheco's gone, Rice is gone. Kelsey doesn't even look like he looked last year. He doesn't
right.
The Chiefs are really befuddling to me because I will maintain, Doug, and you can feel free to, I don't think they're a great football team right now. I know they're undefeated and the defense is unbelievable, but offensively, they don't scare anybody. I don't know.
But they do with Mahomes. They do with Mahomes, don't they? Scare some people?
Yeah. I don't know. Look at the receivers he's trotting out. Like, honestly, I mean, the Raiders, this Raiders is interesting. Let's talk about that game. So instantly this moves up. Chiefs are huge favorites. They just dismantle the Niners. But of course, some people want to mention, hey, remember in the offseason when the Raiders did that voodoo doll thing and making fun of Patrick Mahomes with the Kermit the Frog, whatever it was. And Mahomes said, oh, we'll worry about that later in the season. Again, I don't know how you factor that into your handicapping. But Patrick Mahomes has had a down year. I think he's tied for the league lead in interceptions. If ever there was a game where he's just going to be like, oh, I'm going ham on you guys, we're going to go for 40, it feels like maybe this is the spot, unless you don't think KC's even capable of that. They're a huge
I do think they're capable. Yeah, I mean, they kind of manhandled the Saints in that one game, and they had that pick on the goal line too. But that Saints win isn't as impressive as we thought it was at the time.
No, yeah.
I would say I was looking at the Raiders plus 10, and then the whole Kermit the Frog thingy got me off of it. I do. I factored in where it's like I don't have to bet the game. Like in my pick'em league, in my pick'em leagues, I'll take the plus 10. In my contest, I have to come up with 5, so I got to figure it out.
That's the toughest part.
But we have no buys this week, if I remember correctly. So that we have
no buys and no London game, which is nice.
Yeah. So look, it's been hard, man. Like last week, I had like 2 sides that's all I did. Like I just didn't like the card. I had a million.
Let me guess. You loved Seattle, right?
I did their team total and over, but then I lost the game over too. So I split that.
Yeah, I had 2 and 3 in the contest. The 2 I loved were layups, automatic, and then the other 3 just kind of fluky stuff. And then, like an idiot, I went against Mahomes with the Niners. And let me ask you this: Deebo Samuel practices all week. Okay, no restrictions, nothing. He's fine. And then he shows up to the game sick, plays 3 plays, and is out. Like the people expecting San Fran, like myself, to do well in that when obviously Deebo's a huge part of the game plan. And then poof, he's gone after 3 plays. Like just logistically, oh my gosh, that's a shot. He's like your team leader. He's the first guy out of the tunnel with Trent Williams. And he's got pneumonia. He can't even play. It's bad when Deebo Samuel can't get on the field. Like that to me was that's brutal. But some of these injuries,
you don't let that affect you. You just got to let that go. When
2 weeks ago, Michael Pittman. How about Michael Pittman 2 weeks ago? Hey, Wednesday looks like he's headed toward IR. Sunday catches a game-winning touchdown pass. What the fuck is that? I don't know, man.
That was a really outlier situation. But the NFL, look, there's no teeth to the penalty. Like, I mean, the NFL is trying to get them to do it, but there's no punishment. So, like Cam Rising, like there's no punishment.
Oh gosh,
to Kyle Whittingham not doing anything with that injury. Now, finally, a week ago, they finally announced that he's done for the year. But every week it was like Panda Watch. And so, what are you supposed to do as a gambler?
Yeah.
When it's just this, is he or is he not playing? But there's no ramifications or consequences. So I don't blame the coach either. If that gamesmanship helps with the opposing team.
Let me ask you 2 more. Chargers Saints. So this is one of those weird spots. We've seen 2 of them this season where one team's coming off extra rest from Thursday, and that would be the Saints. They got destroyed. And the other's coming off a short rest, the Chargers on Monday Night Football.
Right. So the other one was Giants Seattle. Right.
Yes, and Seattle got smoked,
magnified like no other.
And
the other playing quarterback for the Saints.
Well, that's the only hang up. But as it just because I'm a moron. I was like, you know what? Let me just go ahead and grab the Chargers -7.5. If they find out that there's no Carr and Olave's not back, we know Shaheed's done. We don't know about Taysom Hill. Like the Saints are just a mash unit, and we know they can't stop the run. I mean, the Eagles ran. Everybody runs all over them. I mean, Kareem Hunt came off the sofa and ran for a buck 20 or whatever. I
Right.
see Harbaugh just slow 20-7 kind of game, 20-6, whatever it is. But
Yeah,
how
I
do
think
you
it could be a
handicap this?
shootout. If
Oh,
if it's Carr or even if it's Jake Hayner, I think it can be a shootout.
why are you reading shootout? What?
Because the Saints are going to give up points right away. I know what you mean by Harbaugh is going to want to run on them, but you can have chunk plays as well. And I think the Saints have enough weapons with Kamara and still like if you just need a competent quarterback, Rattler's not good. Like if
No.
Jake Hayner played, I think they can put up a lot of points. I really do.
Interesting. So, but we don't know who the starter is
Because of the
so,
rest advantage and things like that, like you
yeah.
said.
Have you fired on this game at all?
No, no, this is a card I hate. Now I hated last week too, and I ended up being, prophetic on that because I didn't do well. Like I didn't like the card. I didn't like anything. I usually do my best in October, November because the math guys get sort of solidified, and I think there's situational handicapping, like you were talking about. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the card's just not that favorable. Like my favorite play this week is the Jets and Patriots over 41.
Oh dear. Goodness gracious. The Jets. I can't. That's my team, and I can't even watch them, Doug. So
well, don't you think the offense,
over what?
41. Like,
okay,
don't you think the offense is like needs to get right? Like, don't you think they need a breakout sort of performance? And the Patriots defense is the perfect kind of, prescription for that.
I do wonder, and again, no math involved. Mayo goes and calls out his team as soft. Belichick then goes on somewhere and says, "You can't call your player soft. That's not right." I don't know whether it's going to be a mutiny in the locker room or it's going to wake guys up. I'm doing nothing.
Do you think that like they're capable of playing better if they tried harder? I just don't think they're good. So
well, the Jets they could be down 4 guys in the secondary, and Drake May has actually done kind of well.
Well, I think
okay.
the Patriots. Well, that's why I like the over. I don't want to lay it with the Jets. I think we're going to see some points. I don't think the Patriots call them soft, call them great. Like I don't think their defense is good. So they're like it's like telling me if I cannot dunk. So I go and try to dunk and I don't get there, and it's like you call me soft. Like I'm not going to all of a sudden be able to dunk, right? Because I'm mad. Like I don't think they can play better because I don't think they're good.
I think I saw a stat, Doug. They've had 7 games and 7 different offensive line combinations. Like they're just a mess. Trading Judon, Barmore's stuff. Like they don't have any. I thought
they gave up those defensive guys, but when Brissett was playing, the opposing teams knew that he couldn't throw the ball. So now that Drake May, I mean, frankly, he'll turn the ball over, and that helps an over too. So like the line got bet up, I think, from 38 to like 42, and then there's buyback. Like, I think this thing could have like 50, 55 points. Like, the Jets need to get right on offense, and it's another week of practice with Devontae Adams, things like that.
Well, wait, Adams has a hamstring. He may not go this week because they're in a short week next week.
Totally banged up. So
very, yeah. Let me ask you one other thing. I think
Drake May and those guys can score on him.
So, like the old school guys you referenced earlier in the podcast, they will probably look at this spot and see, ooh, divisional rematch, okay, outdoors. Automatically the divisional rematches historically go under. I don't have the ATS in front of me, but
and do you think that's why it opened Saints, right?
Yeah.
We have one with
that's
Falcons
why it opened 38.
I think it's the straight math is using output and data points from when Jacoby Brissett was playing. So I think those low scores, those inept offensive outputs went into that fact. And I just think it's a completely different team. I wouldn't even consider the offensive numbers from those weeks that Brissett was the quarterback. I just won't even consider it. It's a completely different team as far as I'm concerned.
So that's your favorite total. Is there a side that you've kind of narrowed down?
It's really hard to lay the lumber with Denver because
I don't know. I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that hard.
I mean,
I know Bo
they
Nix
should not be laying that kind of points.
But that was what everybody said last week against the Saints, and it's like no. Look at the matchup. It's the Saints. Right. They're not right.
And Carolina's bad, and Bryce Young's bad. I mean, that's like I think that should go on my tombstone down the road. I was the only person just from the highest hilltop I can get is Bryce Young is not an NFL quarterback.
Did you? Well, I guess they're not out yet, but prop numbers on defensive touchdown for the Broncos got to go high. I mean, honestly, It feels like Surtain's probably going to get one. The pressure.
Yes, Surtain's going
I
to be
mean,
back.
this is just tough spot. Let me.
I will say we've seen quarterbacks get better a little bit when they've been able to see the game from a different angle on the sideline, and just whether it's Dalton just saying, "Hey, small bites, take what the defense gives you," things like that. Although he was terrible last week, um, but maybe he's going to be a little bit better because he has a high football IQ, and maybe there's upside there. He's just tiny. That's my issue with him. I never questioned his aptitude from a reading defenses thing. But he's regressed in the NFL, and he's not an NFL quarterback. He's just too small. It's just that simple. But I would look there. There's no like dogs that are jumping off the page for me.
Wait. You would look where? Denver or Carolina?
Denver.
Yeah,
Denver. I think the Jets +7's worth a look as well. I just think there's
-7?
better things. +7. The Jets. I'm sorry. The Patriots +7. I apologize.
Patriots. Interesting.
At home, but the Jets just need this game too much. It's like too important to them.
How about this one? Let's go to Bears, Washington. You've got the injury thing to Jaden Daniels. So there's a report that Daniels did not practice today. And I think they said we'll see Friday. But if you read Ian Rappaport's tweet, he wrote it's trending as if Mariota will get the start. Now, you can read the tea leaves in that and say, oh, it's going to be Mariota. They have a huge divisional matchup with the Giants next week. That means more than this Bears game. And I mean, again, Doug, this is just kind of a guess, but I don't think Daniels is going to go. Remember the RG3 stuff? He had the injuries. They forced him out there. It ended horribly. I think that Washington is cautious here, and I'm on the Bears here.
I would go the other way. I just think it's going to be a strong effort game from Washington. Bears have won 3 straight. I don't think they're that good. The problem is Washington's defense isn't good. So the Bears have capitalized on facing the bad defenses on their schedule the last 3 weeks. Yeah. But Washington's just like the 4th one. That's my concern. Does the
bye matter to you?
A little bit. I don't think their coaching staff's really good. So I don't know if they're taking advantage of it. Unless they had a bunch of injuries, they had to get healthy. Obviously, that the bye can serve as a huge asset, or it can disrupt a win streak too. I like this Washington team, but it's just Jaden Daniels. Like, I do think a guy like Mariota at this juncture of his career, like there could be, like, he could be much better now. Like, there is reason for guys to get better. And if it's just one of those things where you like, look at Flacco. I mean, he was good before, but so much of this game is mental and IQ based. I mean, Peyton Manning's last year in Denver, right? And so if Mariota's gotten better and just learned, like Sam Darnold's a great example, right? He's just become more knowledgeable for the position, and he can anticipate more things than he could before, and therefore he's not reacting, he's anticipating. And so if the game is slowing down for a guy like Mariota, there's no reason he can't be like a decent QB if he's got obviously the mobility as well. And he doesn't have to do much if he's got good weapons and just, kind of just, and it's all the cliches of football. Make sure every drive ends with a kick and blah, blah, blah. But I'm a big believer, whether it be college football within a season or NFL within a season or a quarter, like, people are allowed to get better. Like, yes, we have our first impressions, but that doesn't mean it's definitive. Like, you don't get to this level of sports, whether it's the NFL or NBA, whatever, by being like a chump, right? So if a guy, yes, we have the Jamarcus Russells of the world and we have some other busts, but usually you have a competitive. That's why teams that get blown out, you want to bet on in the next week, because that week of practice, they're buttoned up, they're competitive dudes, they're elite athletes. Like, you're going to get a good effort, or at least preparation all week. So I do believe that Mariota could be a lot better at this juncture and Sam Darnold versus like 4 years ago.
You did reference the Bears getting healthy off the bye. So in week 6 in London, they were down 3 defensive backs. It looks like Stevenson is back. Brisker will have cleared concussion protocol, and their secondary has been pretty damn good. Now, as you alluded to, they played crap quarterbacks, but you put Johnson, Byard, Brisker, Steven, that's a pretty great combo. And I mean, I feel pretty good about my Bears side, 2.5.
Good.
Well, not great. I mean, you never feel great.
I agree that Daniels probably isn't playing. Like, I'm with you on that.
I guess the last one, Doug, you can laugh. So the New York Giants go to Pittsburgh Monday night. It is the biggest spread post Ben Roethlisberger that Tomlin's laid. The other 2 big spreads they did not cover. I can't believe this, but I think I'm going to be backing Daniel Jones. I think on Monday Night Football.
I'm with you in terms of like the thought. No, I'm not betting them. I'm just saying, like,
Okay.
I
Okay.
understand where you're coming from. My biggest concern is just the happy feet against that pass rush, right?
Yeah.
Um,
No left
you know,
tackle
he's
against
played
TJ Watt.
well. Yeah, he's played well in a couple games. And frankly, like the Browns have a decent, can put pressure on the quarterback, and they almost beat the Eagles. And the Commanders game, he played well. They should have, but that's a bad defense. The Cowboys have a bad defense, and they couldn't even get in the end zone. I wonder if like that offense can just be completely disrupted by a Steelers team. And that defense, man, like I was shocked they lost to the Cowboys. Like the Cowboys completely outplayed them that game, frankly. And other than that, like this defense is a disruptor. And
Mm.
but I'm not in a rush to lay 6.5. I still think
Mm.
Russ is like so, although he looked okay, he throws the deep
It's
ball still.
okay. Yeah.
There's going to be an adjustment, like the rust, like some of those short hops have to go away, you think?
Well, I'm
But
not in a rush to back the Giants, but I need 5 in the contest, and I've only got
right, no, I know.
3.
I
That's
look, I try. Look, I'm also like handicapping the NBA and all this crazy stuff. I'm
I don't know how
looking
you
at a
do
few
that.
things in the NFL. The over, I'm surprised it's come down a little bit after going up a lot. That New England Jets game, like that's the only game that I think is a strong bet for me. I'm warming up to the Packers for sure. Like, but this talks about the market. The market has the buyback at 5, and now it's bought back from 4.5 to 4. Why? Because
Yeah,
they
I don't.
can't help themselves. It's a math again. It's the math thing. They're like, well, the line should be this. I made it this. I have to bet it. And in their defense, they make money doing this, right?
Mm,
Like they are profitable, and so they have to stick to their math because they're going to go 6-4, 6-5, and it's going to, whatever it is, right? 7-5, and we're just trying to go 4-3-2 in a contest, or maybe just 2-1 on bets, and we have our right. So while we may be right on that Packers game, they're not about to deviate from their math
mhm.
and start doing something that has been working for so long. So like think about it like the MIT blackjack, right? Like they know if the count is this, like, they're just going to do it. And you're sitting there like, why would you hit 12 against a 4 or something? And it's like, well, the math said that, whatever it is. So I think they're going to do it their way, but that's the beauty of the NFL. Like that's the one nice thing is the sharp money keeps the market from getting too crazy unless there's a significant injury with quarterback or something like that. But like there's gonna be resistance on the Panthers. Just watch. There,
Oh,
obviously there was an adjustment when Darnold's officially out, and now what's going to happen? So it's already come back. It hit 10.5, I think, and now it's solid 10 everywhere. Maybe it didn't hit 10.5, but it's a solid 10 everywhere. And I just think as soon as a book, because the weekend's going to come, the public's going to
yep.
come in heavy, and then they're going to try 10.5, but the sharps will bite right away because that's just how they are.
Yeah. All right,
And it
Doug
works for them.
Kazarian.
It works for them.
Only players. Go ahead and check that out. Very cool. Listen, a lot of people leave ESPN and it's like, oh man, they're gonna get lost. Doug is crushing it, and continued success, my friend. Hopefully, will you be at the Super
Thanks.
Bowl or no? Or
No, I mean, I was obviously here in town last year, so I have no plans this year. I probably should be looking into that and doing that because at least I'll go for the week because, I'm wearing the entrepreneurial hat during all this as well. So
yeah, you
I'm
got to,
learning a
man.
lot about distribution and sales and just the mechanics. Now, fortunately, my business partner has like basically my career from a sales standpoint. So he's done network sales and all this stuff. So he understands all these acronyms for online videos and all this stuff, but CPMs and all the
Mhm.
distribution lingo. But I've learned a lot and talking with more, like we had a really big call today, and like I understand what they want from a content standpoint and in a minute video and distribute. So I'm learning a lot on how the sausage is made, which I think has made me better on air. We'll see, but
Better on
not a
air,
better
dude. You were at
handicapper,
ESPN for years. Come on, how are you gonna get
not
better?
necessarily a better handicapper, but
Oh,
it's a slow grind for sure. And there's obviously like you wonder and you miss the bells and whistles of an ESPN for sure, and just being back on campus and interacting. Like I loved campus life. It's just working with like a bunch of smart, cool people, like that
yeah,
from Fox.
yeah.
Um, but the entrepreneurial life is cool too, and I can go anywhere whenever I want and